glass. There it was, pretty as she remembered, with a lovely creamed metal casing on a red stand. Gosh, it was an honest-to-goodness pretend real sewing machine, with a fancy gold swirling design and the words Little Betty signed across the bottom in the prettiest handwriting you ever saw. It was probably Canadian or American or something, she figured. "Come on, Faith, let's go," her brother Harold said. With a big sigh and one last glance at the toy sewing machine, she left the shop with a wave of her cherry mitted hand towards the showcase. Her heart was heavy with longing. There was never money for fancy things like toys, with there being so many of them at home. Mom worked hard, and some of her brothers and sisters had jobs that helped a bit, but it wasn't more than just enough. Sure, she was as well dressed as any little girl on the island, spoiled rotten, some said, but that was because her mother could make the prettiest dresses you ever saw, like magic. And that's why she wanted the machine, so she could be just like her and make dresses and pretty aprons, same as her. Still, that little sewing machine was something her heart desired more than anything on earth, but it was useless to hope. She'd get an orange, that was always good, and she'd have a hearty good Christmas dinner with all her family and friends, so at least there was that to count on. The church service would be too long, like it always was the night Santa was to come, but she'd come through that and perhaps it would help her to fall asleep. It certainly was hard not to fall asleep in church, that was for sure.
A few days before Christmas, her mother went to Mr. Bound's store again. It was time to pick up some cheese and other needs for Christmas. Faith ran to the showcase to see Little Betty sewing machine the minute they were through the heavy wooden door. Oh no, her heart sank. Instead of Little Betty, a tray of wristwatches sat there. Pretty enough, but not something a little girl might want Santa Claus to bring. Faith moved further down, then looked all over the store, but it was nowhere to be seen. Sold. Oh, some other little girl would wake up to the toy she had so dearly wished for on Christmas morning. She knew she should be happy for that little girl, and she was, but she was so sad for herself. She'd get a few nice things in her sock, that's for sure, but nothing under the tree so nice as a real, honest-to-goodness, pretend grown-up sewing machine that you could really sew with. Oh, no good to think about it. Done is done, as her mother always said, but she couldn't help the tears that filled her eyes and rolled down over her cheeks. It was so sad that she'd never get to see that little Betty again.
Several days later, the old church creaked around several hundred souls gathered to celebrate the holiest of days, and Faith prayed along with the others for peace and love and joy. She sang the old hymns, and her favorite, called Silent Night, seemed perfectly suited for this lovely Christmas Eve. While walking home, she noticed that the night was wrapped in a pretty package of crisp, cool air and sparkling snowbanks. Above them, the stars twinkled like millions of candles lit by God above to decorate heaven for the holidays.
Later, tucked into bed with her sister Christine, she decided it was okay not to get a new toy sewing machine that was just like an honest-to-goodness real pretend one. Oh, Santa would bring her what he could, and it was just fine by her. There, under the heavy patchwork quilts made by her mother from the old clothes of her ancestors, Faith drifted off into a deep sleep, and in that tiny town, tucked in between the edge of the continent and the tides of the Atlantic Ocean, the peace, love, and joy of the season was abundant.
No matter how early Faith got up, and on Christmas morning she got up earlier than ever, her mother was always up first. The kitchen was warm from the crackling wood stove and filled with the delicious aromas of breakfast. Her family was gathering, brothers, sisters, some who were still living at home, and a few who had traveled to be there for the season. They created a cacophony of laughter and chatter, for hers was a boisterous crowd, with her mother ruling the roost for sure, but not without allowances for a good time. Faith and her sister Christine ran to see what was in their socks. There they found the expected cake of cameo soap, a delicious orange, knitted mitts and socks, and even a few peppermint knobs. What more could a child want?
"Merry Christmas, Faith," her big brother Harold said. "Merry Christmas," she replied, eyes as big as saucers at the bounty on this Christmas morning. "What's over in the corner behind the tree?" he asked, eyes twinkling. The chatter of a dozen family members ceased at his words. Little Faith peered up at them all from her quiet spot on the floor. They each had an odd smile on their faces, like they were up to no good. They were always playing tricks on her, so she wouldn't look. "No way, no siree." "Under the tree, Faith," her sister Christine said. "Go look." "What? There is really something there?" Nope, they wouldn't trick her. She wouldn't make her think something was there. That wasn't so. She wasn't too sweet for that. But perhaps she should look. She glanced over and saw something sticking out. What? She stood up and walked over, with just one glance back at her family, who were moving in close behind her.
She reached in and pulled on the item, letting in a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "Little Betty," she whispered, and then louder, "Santa Claus brought me my sewing machine." She held it up. It was heavy because it was a real, honest-to-goodness pretend machine, with a needle and a crank to make it go, just like the one her mother had. She ran her fingers across the swirly design and over the lovely handwritten words, "Little Betty." "Do you like it?" her big brother Harold asked. "It's the nicest thing I've ever had," she said, a tear forming in the corner of her eye, then plopping out. The chatter picked back up, and she let them all have a look at her new toy.
"It was your brother Harold who had a word with Santa Claus, I dare say," her mother said, a slight smile of happiness on her face. The general splendor of the moment warmed a mother's heart. No, she'd not been able to put that under the tree for Faith herself, but she'd raised a man who could, and of that, well, she was mighty proud. Times were hard in many families back 50-plus years ago in a Newfoundland outport, and it was a rare thing for a little girl's dreams, especially lofty ones, like a Little Betty sewing machine coming true. But that day, Santa brought an unexpectedly pleasure to a little girl.
Harold Johnson Parsons